we are.
Hey, everybody. Wow. Today, Magnus Walker. Most of you guys know who follow this along. The reason I started a podcast, which turned into Facebook Live, was just a reason for me to credibly reach out to people I really admire and try to trick them into having a conversation. And we've had some really amazing people on the show. I've been very fortunate. Today is no different. I'm very excited to have Magnus on the show. For people who are not familiar, I don't even know where to start. Magnus Walker is a former fashion designer, fashion brand owner, Porsche enthusiast, collector, rebel customizer, TED speaker, and at this point, I'm going to call him an all-around media personality because he's been everywhere and he's just been very generous with a lot of people in his time. So, Magnus, thank you very much for being on the show.
That's quite an intro. Thank you very much for having me. Looks like you've done a little bit of research. I just refer to myself as a man with a beard, so I'm seeing this as a two-dude, two-bro beard convention, the Bearded Brother Man Club, so to speak. I have these, I jokingly refer to these type of things as a beard convention. I've done them all over the world. Today I'm calling in from downtown LA in the Arts District. I was running a little bit late, but I'm happy to be here, and I think we're actually on time. So thanks for having me on.
So you mentioned the downtown Arts District. So you don't know anything about me, and that's cool. But I'm a semi-successful marketing guy who travels all over the place to work on projects. I've spent a lot of time in LA, and I was drawn to the Arts District because, of course, Philippe's is like maybe the most delicious sandwich in the area, and the street art, which I'm a big fan of street art. What drew you to the Arts District?
Well, first of all, I've lived in the Arts District since 1994. I hate to say I've never been to Philippe's. I will say that.
Oh, my goodness. You got to go.
For those that don't know, I'm from England. I'm about to turn 53. I came to LA in 1986 when I was 19. I was in Hollywood, then Venice, and then I moved to the Arts District in 1994. So I've been here 26 years. First I was renting a loft and I ended up buying a building that I'm in now in 2000. What drew me to the Arts District, the long answer to your question really was, that was when I had serious clothing. I was in the garment industry. I'd previously been living in Venice, which was really great, but trying to get anything done in Venice Beach wasn't quite as easy as being downtown where the garment center was. And I ended up renting a loft from 94 to 2000. So back then it was a little bit different environment. It was more industrial, more desolate, wasn't nearly as gentrified as it's become today. So the part of the answer to your question is what drew me to the Arts District was a 3,500 square foot loft back in 1994. Since then, I've come to love the space all the area. Has a lot of character. It's actually a walkable neighborhood, which is something that's pretty rare for LA. And then over the past 10 years, it's gone through massive gentrification. But that wasn't what drew me to it. But it's just a nice place to be. It's not quite it's evolved. So in the sense, it's lost a little bit of its charm and grittiness, but it's gained some convenience. But it's right at this sort of tipping point where literally less than 100 yards from where I'm sat, Spotify's moving in, doing a massive overhaul on a new purpose-built space. Warner Brothers relocated 1 block away. Soho House opened up 2 blocks away. WeWork's a block away. These are things that 20, 25 years ago would never even, didn't exist, right? None of these places really existed. So it's one of those things that maybe it's right on the cusp of being over gentrified, but time will tell. The Arts District is my home. It's where I ran my clothing company out of. Was the birthplace of the film location business and is the home to my Porsche car collection. I still live in the Arts District. So, I've lived here, worked here, and owned property here for the past 25, 26 years. So there's a long answer to what drew me to the Arts District. The short answer is a lot of character and cool spaces.
All right, long answers are okay. So
I ramble on, so you can edit down however you choose to edit.
We're going to talk about Porsches in a bit, but you did mention your film location business. I'm fascinated by that. How did you get into that?
Purely by accident. A lot of things in my life have all happened organically. And to backtrack, I'd describe myself as sort of street smart as opposed to book smart. I left school at 15 at an early age. So my whole thing had sort of been, coming to America and adapting to a new environment. So the long rambling answer to how we got into the film location business was we bought this building in 2000, 26,000 square feet, two-story brick, built in 1902. And we spent probably 9 months renovating it, actually legally, to be able to live and work in the building. So the goal was true loft, live upstairs, run my clothing company out of downstairs. And right after 9/11, so this is end of September 2001, there was an article in the LA Times color supplement featuring about 10 or 12 lofts, talking about adaptive reuse of former industrial buildings in the Arts District and downtown Los Angeles vicinity. And we were sort of one of the featured lofts, double spread, fold out, because we had one of the biggest spaces. And about a week later, we got a phone call from a location company basically saying, would we be interested in renting the loft for a music video? Now, to back up, I'd lived in the Arts District since 94 to 2000 prior to owning this building. And I'd seen a lot of TV and movies and films being shot in the area. They'd shot everything in the area from the 50s. Grease was shot in the LA River, less than 100 yards from where I'm sat, in the 70s. And Terminator, Batman, Gone in 60 Seconds, car commercials, music videos. But because I didn't own property, it never occurred to me that I could actually make money out of renting something out to a production company. So the answer is, it came organically from a phone call. Hey, we saw your loft in the LA Times Sunday color supplement. Would you be interested in renting it for a music video? We said yes. We were naive. That music video turned out to be a Missy Elliott video, and it sort of taught us everything we needed to know about the film location business in one very long 20-hour day. Long story short, we gave an inch, they took a mile. We got taken advantage of. So we sort of learned very quickly how to set boundaries, how to say yes, how to say no. A perfect example was he'd say, hey, can we shoot a little scene in your office? And 3 hours later, there were another 40 people here. And I said, what's going on? They said, well, we're shooting a Verizon cell phone tie. Nobody told you that? No one told us that. So long story short, finally, after 20 hours of what started out as a 12-hour day, I'd started at 6 a.m. on a Friday and went to bed at 4 a.m. on a Saturday morning, 22 hours later. I didn't know what a site rep was, someone that takes care of your property for you. I gave an inch, they took a mile. And I remember saying, you know what? I'll never do that again. Once the dust had settled and we realized how much money we made in that one day, because 20 years ago, music videos paid a lot of money and these guys were deeply into overtime, which rapidly went from time and a half to double time. And that was when we went, maybe we'll do that again. So we kind of lived and filmed, and were very selective as to what we chose to film, because waiting for a production company to break down is like watching paint dry. The turning point came in 2004. We did a Bruce Willis movie called The Whole 10 Yards with Matthew Perry and Amanda Peet. And this was the turning point, yet again, purely accidentally organic. They rented the building for a month, paid us a shitload of dough, and rented us a house in the Hollywood Hills. And finally, the light bulb flashed, and it went, hey, I bet if we didn't live here, we could film all the time. So we took a leap of faith, moved out in 2004 after only having lived in the building for about 3 years. And by my math, 16 years later, never moved back in. And that was when we went from sort of part-time filming, let's say doing 15, 20 days a year over the next 10 years at our peak, to doing well over 120 days of commercial filming. Everything from reality shows such as America's Next Top Model, American Idol, to TV shows such as CSI New York, crime drama scenes, music videos, commercials, fast food, cell phone, alcohol. And that was when it went from sort of a part-time business to a full-time business that was pretty lucrative for about 10, 12 years. Because one thing with the film location industry, if you've got a unique look, treat people well, and reputation gets around quickly, that A, you've got a great film location, and B, you're film friendly. So we had a very, very good run for quite a long time. So that is the long answer to is how I got into the film location business, purely by chance.
No, that's very cool. So I learned about you through the documentary Urban Outlaw, as I'm sure a bunch of people did. And in the doc, so first of all, it's a documentary really, about you, your collection, your passion for Porsches. Thing that I connected with the most, though, was like, anybody could collect a bunch of Porsches. Anyone could have, an eye for customizing and things like that. But the documentary really showed, this unique character, this person who really cared and passion sort of, you just sort of jumped right out of the documentary. It was really interesting. One, how did the documentary start? And one of my favorite things about the documentary is you tell a story about writing a letter to Porsche as a kid. And so maybe you could just tell that story too, please.
Well, there's going to be a theme here, just like how we got into the film location business. This one sort of happened very organically in around 2011, late 2011, probably December. I got an email from this crazy Canadian, Tamir Moscovici, who'd seen a post that I had on this online Porsche forum on Pelican Parts called Porsche Collection Out of Control Hobby. It was me sort of just on a forum of Porsche people posting about my hobby and love affair with Porsche. And Tamir was a Porsche enthusiast himself and a film director, commercial director. And he'd seen some magazine articles, because probably from 2010, 2011, I started getting a little bit of coverage in various magazine articles. But believe it or not, I actually hadn't done a film and was a little bit reluctant to do that, even though people had approached me to, hey, let's make a video of you and your Porsche. But something clicked with Tamir. I liked him as an individual. We literally had one or two phone conversations, and then he took a leap of faith and flew down from Toronto on frequent flyer miles. This was a pet project of his, and he came to visit me in LA in February of 2012 for 4 days. And the original goal was to make a short YouTube 3 to 5 minute film. Well, the passion project, the stars aligned. Tamir hired a very talented bunch of individuals here in LA. And basically, we set about making a short documentary film, which became a 32-minute award-winning short documentary film. For me, it was like I had no idea. I'd never been in front of a camera. My sort of thought was, how bad can this be? I'll get to drive some cars and maybe something will become of it. So that was really how it started. It was a passion project for Tamir Moscovici. Without him, I wouldn't be here today. So whenever I do these type of interviews, I always give 2 thumbs up and a massive thanks to Tamir, because he basically shared my story. The short documentary film Urban Outlaw is not a Porsche story. It's a story of my life and my dream. Porsche is a vehicle that takes you on the journey through that story. And, Tamir was a very talented guy at cinematography. And he had a great filmmaker, Anthony Arden, and then a great director who essentially would take my ramblings like I'm doing now and cut them down into these tasty little 30-second sound bites. So essentially, Tamir made me look good. He'd ask me a question, what does Porsche mean to you? And I'd ramble on for 20 minutes. And then he'd find the one little cool bit, of what Porsche meant to me, and basically edited that down into a very cinematic story that flowed. There's a pace to it. And the great thing about that film is I've received a lot of emails over the past 7 or 8 years about people that saw it. And they're not all from guys. It'll be like girlfriends of guys that saw the film and wrote me a little email saying, hey, I finally get it. My boyfriend or husband's not the only crazy guy. But the relatability was the stories really of passion and trying to live your life to the fullest and trying to fulfill your dreams. And you asked me about writing a letter to Porsche. Well, when I was 10 years old, I had a poster on the wall like one of those over there. I'm trying to figure which way the camera's going here in reverse. And I wrote a letter to Porsche as a 10-year-old. My dad had took me to the London Saul Colt Motor Show as a 10-year-old in 1977. I got a sales brochure, had the poster on the wall, and wrote a letter to Porsche saying, hey, I want to design cars for you. They wrote me a letter back, said, hey, call us when you're older, essentially. And in the film Urban Outlaw, I was 45 at the time in 2012 when I shot it. And Tamir asked me a pretty interesting question. He goes, what do you think Porsche would think about the cars, that you've modified and renovated? And I think I said something about, I hope they'd be smiling, or I hope they'd like them. And the film came out, and of course it got some critical acclaim, because at that point there weren't really many documentaries that were shot stylistically like that. And the full circle story 35 years later was Porsche wrote me a letter back. This was the second letter from Porsche. And essentially it said, hey, we've seen your film Urban Outlaw, and we understand you're a passionate fan of the brand, and we'd like you to come and visit us. And that started my strange relationship with Porsche in the sense of, I'm a fan of the brand. I call myself a member of the family in some strange way, but I'm not a Porsche ambassador. I don't receive any money from Porsche, but they seem to invite me to car launches and, allow me to drive their cars. I spent yesterday putting 250 miles on the new 992 Turbo S and made a little video about it. But none of that would have happened if it wasn't for Tamir's film. But the one common thread that connects the story together is I'm very passionate about certain things. And I always say passion is something that you can't manufacture, put in a cup and sell it. Here's passion, right? You either have it or you don't, and it comes from the heart. It's nothing to do with, with money. It's just something that drives you, that you're excited about. And I think that's my relatability. That led on to a TED Talk that I did in 2014. And I would say the TED Talk's the most viewed thing I've ever done. At last count, it's over 8 million views. And I'd say 98% of the people that watched the TED Talk that I did in 2014 had A, no idea who I was, and B, weren't car people. But my TED Talk was go with your gut feeling. Essentially, that's my whole story of my life, is just simply do what you love to do to the best of your ability and never give up. And that's also a relatable element that came through in the TED Talk, of which, I receive a lot of emails still to this day of people that had seen the TED Talk and said, hey, I really like your attitude and individualism about doing things that you love, the shared passion. That's the common thread, do what you love. So, one thing led to another, and these are all steps along the path of life of essentially is make the most out of every moment and do things to the best of your ability that you really are inspired by and passionate about. And I've discovered that passion and drive will get you further than, possibly you first thought. And for me, that's kind of been my entrepreneurial spirit for the past 33 years that I've lived in LA. It's all about sort of doing things that inspire you, that motivate you, that get you out of bed in the morning. I'm still waking up early at like 5 a.m. wanting to go do stuff. Mm-hmm. Yesterday I had a 5:30 call time to go make a video with a bunch of people I hadn't really worked with before that went on till 10 p.m. Do the math on how many hours that was. It was a 17-hour day passion project that I was super excited to do, and I was buzzing when I got home, and I didn't even go to bed till midnight because I was on this high adrenaline, endorphin rush of just doing something I was excited about. So I'm still passionate about cars to this day and doing things that motivate me. So there's another long answer for you right there.
It's okay, I love it. So a little bit about me. I'm one of these guys who, once I see something, I try to get more information and everything. So when I saw Urban Outlaw, I watched it. I thought it was the coolest thing I've ever seen. I made my dad watch it because my dad is my dad kind of got me into cars. He was really into hot rods and George Barris and stuff like that, a bit of a different generation. And then from Urban Outlaw, I found the TED Talk, and that's where I really became a fan. So it was like, from the documentary, it was like, oh, this guy's really cool. It was more of like I dig, his whole thing. But the TED Talk was really where, if it's possible to say this, where I got to know you a little bit, or, got to see a little bit behind that. One of the things that really stuck with me in the TED Talk, and I try to do this, but I don't think I do it as well as I should, was you kind of just don't give a shit what people think about you. And one of my favorite things in it was that you said you never asked anyone what they thought of things. You just kind of did it. And I thought that was really impressive. And am I reading it right, or am I getting it all wrong?
No, you've got it right. I think in my experience, a lot of people get derailed by other people's opinions. And what I mean by that is, you've got an idea to do something. So you ask your buddy, and your buddy might go, no, that's a stupid idea. That'll never work. And a lot of people give up because they're afraid of failure. So, there's a lot of sort of aborted projects because people are afraid to start them because they may have asked someone's opinion, and that person may have given them an answer like, no, that's not going to work, right? So for me, not really having any education in the sense of what was, the acceptable norm, I didn't really have these rules to box myself in with. And, coming to America early as a 19-year-old, I often talk about becoming an adaptive swimmer. I came to the States to work on a summer camp with inner city underprivileged kids. on a summer camp north of Detroit, Lake Michigan. And that was a completely different environment for me. I'd never, summer camps don't exist in England. I wasn't in the Cubs or Scouts. So, working class kid from Sheffield, England, ended up in Detroit, which in reality was a pretty similar environment, former industrial city that has sort of fallen on hard times. So, but for me, when I arrived on that camp, I was out of my element. I was listening to heavy metal music. Everyone on the camp was listening to Run DMC and LL Cool J. So it was a different vibe. And I learned pretty quickly to become an adaptive swimmer in the sense of you got to sink or swim and learn to adapt to a new environment. And I moved to LA that same summer when I was 19. And sort of by trial and error, I sort of found my way. But because I was in a different country, different environment, to me, success was never going back home and having someone tell me, cut your hair and get a real job. I've had long hair since I was 15. By my math, that's now 38 years. I've never really cut my hair, and I don't think I've ever really had a proper job in the sense where I've worked for someone else. So I've always sort of done things my own way. I describe myself as a little bit of a lone wolf, one-man army. Of course, you get help along the way, but I never got sidetracked by asking other people's opinions or having to borrow money from other people to start a business. I started selling secondhand clothing on the boardwalk in Venice, which didn't take much money. I'd go to thrift stores and buy old Levi's for $1 or $3 and customize them. And that was how I started. So small little baby steps, it wasn't this master plan. I never had a master plan of where do you see yourself in 3 to 5 years. I never thought that way. I was living day to day, sort of making things up as I went along and trial and error. But like I said earlier on, always found things that I was interested in, had a little bit of success, which drove me to the next level. So I think a lot of times people sort of don't really know what they're passionate about, or they haven't found something that they're really excited about. And the TED Talk sort of showed me that sometimes people go down this path of what they think they're doing to please their parents, going to university, get a degree to become a doctor or a lawyer, but that might not be exactly what they want to do. And I got a lot of emails from people that had seen the TED Talk that said, hey, I quit my job and I started, building skateboards in my back bedroom or my garage or whatever. And I'm really happy doing that. So that's kind of the go with your gut feeling, make it up as you go along, which doesn't necessarily work for everyone, but for sort of more of what I would call the street smart entrepreneurial set, of which I believe I fall into that category. It suited my lifestyle pretty well. And it suited my method of madness, I guess you could call it, or the way I like to get things done.
Yeah, so you said that you can't put passion in a cup, but can you teach someone how to not give a shit?
I think you can teach people to sort of, the bottom line is if you have self-confidence and you believe in your own idea, that is the main thing, really. For me, everyone has an opinion. That's fair enough. I don't necessarily buy into it too much in the essence of, when I'm building my cars, I'm doing stuff to please myself, not to please other people. So that's probably where that attitude comes from. I've often thought back to my early years growing up in Sheffield, listening to heavy metal music. That was sort of a rebellious attitude that I had at an early age. I was an athlete in cross-country middle distance runner, which is a solo sport, not a team sport. So I think in a way that might have added to that element of don't necessarily need other people's support and opinions to sort of proceed with my own goals. So I think that's kind of where that attitude comes from. Is that teachable? I don't know. I mean, for me, I'm not really here to teach. Maybe there's teachable elements. For me, I just do what feels natural in the gut. If it sort of feels awkward and exciting at the same time, I often say that's probably something you should do. If you're waking up in the middle of the night thinking about it, you should probably do it. I'm still waking up in the middle of the night thinking about certain things that I want to do. So that fire, that drive, that passion, hopefully keeps burning. There's obviously highs and lows and ups and downs and periods when you're super creative or not super creative. But, if for me, it's like if I'm waking up in the middle of the night, this happened to me last night after the 17-hour day. I was super excited about this video. So that drive is still there. Is that teachable? I don't know.
Mm-hmm. All right. So you're sitting in your garage. You've got one of the most incredible collections of Porsche 911s and, just Porsches in general that, anybody, you ever look around? Well, first of all, let's start with your first car. I read that you bought your first car on a swap meet. What was the car?
Well, that was where I bought my first Porsche. We should probably back up. Growing up in England, I never had a driver's license, so I'd go over on the bus literally for 5 or 10 pence. Coming to America, especially LA, you need a car. So the first car I actually bought a 1977 Toyota Corolla 2TC, probably in 1988, after I'd been here probably a year or two. Might have been 87. I paid $200 for it. I drove it around illegally without a driver's license, and then I passed my California driver's test in 1987 or 1988 in the $200 Toyota. I actually kept that car for probably another 9 months and sold it for $200. Second car I ever bought was probably 91, 92, when I'd made a little bit more money. I bought a Saab 900 SPG Turbo. The first car I ever bought that was a Porsche, I bought at the Pomona Swap Meet in 1992, paid $7,500 for it. And to me, that represented a dream come true, because, it was probably only 15 years earlier that I'd wrote that letter to Porsche saying how I wanted to design cars for them. And growing up as a kid in Sheffield, you didn't see a lot of Porsches. So having the poster on the wall as a 10-year-old and then 15 years later owning my first Porsche represented a real sense of personal achievement and a sense of a dream coming true. So that was a milestone moment for me. And that was, like I say, quite some time ago, and I've owned quite a few since then. But no two are ever the same. I'm all about variety. I like the diversity of them. And what I really like about early Porsches is the early ones, they're fun, they're exciting, they cover all the senses. Back then, they were affordable, they were easy to modify. But now, for me, I talk about humans like to collect, whether it's stamps, watches, whatever it may be. I'm a car guy. I like to collect cars. And for me, when it comes to Porsche, the goal is one of everything, not just 911s. It's one of everything Porsche's ever made in a sports car, which is front engine, mid-engine, rear engine, air and water cooled. So if you're a car guy, that's the 924s, the 928s, the 914s, and then Porsche's now up to 8 generations of 911. So to me, it's all about variety and experience. And what I like about it is, it's a way of stepping back in time. To that car next to me is from 1976. We can't travel back in time, 44 years, but I can get in that car and it's sort of reminiscent of what it would have been like in the 70s. So for me, it's all about these memorable moments, these magical moments, and these experiences. For me, the car is more than a vehicle that takes you from A to B, takes you on a journey where you do create these memorable moments. And that's what I like about them.
So the 911 Targa, is my favorite car of all time, since I was about 10 years old. And my favorite model is the SC, for no other reason than I really love the time period. I love the headlights, and also my name is Saul Colt, the initials SC. There's something about having my initials on the back of the car that kind of works for me.
Makes it your car. I get it.
That's right. I've it's such an obsession that I've been working with a guy on weekends who's teaching me how to fix engines, the old flat six, and I'm trying to sort of bring up my skill set and stuff like that. But I've been trying to buy an SC for a while, and the two that I've almost pulled the trigger on, they just didn't pass the PPI. So I've heard you say there's a Porsche for every budget. I'm striking out on the SC. Should I be looking at something else?
Well, first of all, I've owned a lot of 911s, and I've hardly ever done a PPI on one. I did happen to do one on a car behind me that you can't see up, but that was only because it was in Sydney, Australia. I don't get hung up on PPIs. Truth be told, I never really do them. I've owned enough cars where I always have this same motto: expect the worst, hope for the best. I've never bought a car at whatever price point it is, whether it's low or high, where it didn't need something. So first of all, you have to be prepared that these are old cars. The SC was from 78 to 83. So, it's a 40-year-old car in essence. They're all going to have some deferred maintenance. But ideally, to me, I don't worry about miles. I'd sooner have a high mileage car than a low mileage car, because generally it's being driven and probably being better maintained, believe it or not. So for me, there is a Porsche for every budget. People ask me this question all the time. And, I recently bought a 996 for $5,000. People thought I was nutty, but, these cars are around. There's a Porsche for every budget, in the sense of, if you've got $5,000 to $10,000, you can go get into a Boxster or a 924 or a 944, or possibly into a water-cooled 996. And then you just sort of go up, you pick your poison from there, whether you want to be a 911 air-cooled guy, SC, but those are kind of getting more expensive. But for me, I have a buddy, I'll tell you this story. He was always looking for the perfect Porsche. And I go, the perfect Porsche does not exist. But he was going down this road of looking at a lot of cars. And long story short, 5 years later, he still never owned one. And I go, you've missed out on 5 years of experience. Just buy one and deal with it. You know, a lot of people get hung up on, well, I'm not sure, so-and-so said this, I've heard this, that, and the other. Just get in and experience it for yourself, whether it's a $5,000 Boxster or depending whatever your budget is. Why wait, right? Just get in there and deal with it and enjoy the experience of early Porsche ownership or, you know, modern Porsche ownership. So my advice is buy the best you can, but don't wait forever. And, you know, if you want to get in on a budget, go buy a Boxster or something like that. And, you know, experience what Porsche is and then grow from there. That's always my advice.
So
and also, I tell people, just buy what you love. I've always been fortunate where I bought what I wanted, what I liked before it became trendy. You know, I bought cars which later doubled and tripled, but I never bought them as an investment. And to me, when people send me these emails, hey, look, first-time Porsche owner, what car's going to go up in value? I go, you're looking at it the wrong way. You have to invest in memorable moments. These are priceless. Don't worry about whether the car's going to go up in value or not, because you can't put a price on the enjoyment the car is going to bring you. You know, I've always bought things that I like, which turned out to be ahead of the trend. You know, buying early turbos when they were 20 grand cars, and now they're worth 5 times that. But I never bought them because, hey, I knew it was going to go up in value. I bought them because that was the poster I had on the wall when I was 10 years old, and I fell in love with Porsche. That's the car I think about. So to me, it doesn't matter. You know, I can have as much fun in a $5,000 car as a, you know, the Porsche I drove yesterday. That Porsche alone was 225 grand. You know, I don't have that type of money to spend on a car like that because, you know, if I did, I'd buy 10 cars for that price point as opposed to one. So, you know, it doesn't matter what the car costs. It's like, you know, what do you get out of the experience?
All right, well, then I may get a 968 just because I love the headlights.
I love the 968. I actually have 2 of them, believe it or not. You know, and one of those I bought as a 10 grand car, and I really like it. So I'm a big fan of the 968. I'm a fan of all the transaxle water-cooled cars from the 924 all the way through. It's all part of the Porsche DNA, the Porsche heritage. I'm a huge fan of the 928. It's actually my daily driver. You know, I look at the Panamera today, and I see the 928 silhouette there. So it's all part of the heritage of the brand. And I often say we all speak Porsche. You know, you just pick your own flavor, whether you're a, you know, a water-cooled guy or an air-cooled guy, really.
So I've heard you say we all speak Porsche, and I think that's really fascinating because one of the things that I find so interesting about just the whole myth of Porsche is the community. And, you know, I've watched it as an outsider, and you know, you talk about, you know, you're driving a $225,000 car. My perception, and I'm not in the community, so I'm not going to pretend I am. My perception, though, of like the Porsche Owners Club these are like really fascinating people who love the brand, love the cars. They're, you know, maybe some of them are the doctors and the lawyers, but it seems like a lot of them are really like there for the community and the cars and the love of everything, as opposed to the status of the you know, the brand.
Yeah, I think Porsche, the vehicle, it brings people together. I've met people from all walks of life that I would never have met if it wasn't for the shared connection of the love of the car. You know, it sort of defies where you're from. The common bond is the car. You know, it doesn't matter what your background is. We all have a love affair for these things from Stuttgart that have been around for almost 72 years up to this point, Porsche as a manufacturing company. I think, you know, I've been around a lot of other marques, Lamborghinis, Ferraris, and the shared passion is not quite the same. You know, I have this little thing I say, OPP, other people's Porsches, and I've been able to drive a lot of cars I could never afford to own, the supercars, the 959s, Carrera GTs, 918s, and various other sort of Porsche iconic cars. But it seems like the Porsche ownership is filled with enthusiastic people that want to share the experience. You know, they talk about being the custodians. I've loaned my cars out to friends and, you know, people that want to drive a Porsche for the first time. So it's kind of a way of giving back. You know, you're all part of this community, I suppose, in a way, which, you know, is a global thing. You know, I say it's a language. Doesn't matter if you speak English, German, Japanese. We can all sort of walk around the car and smile and point to things that, you know, we're connected to through the car, the love of the car being more than, like I say, yet again, a vehicle that takes you from A to B. In a way, maybe it does sort of explain a little bit about who you are. The fact that, you choose to drive or own a Porsche is a way, it's part of a club. And for the most part, that club's, got some great fellow members in it. I often say the Porsche world is like a slice of cake, right? You cut it into slices. That people that like to show their cars on golf courses such as Pebble Beach, and have people with white gloves and Q-tips judge them and say what's right and wrong with them. That's not my sort of favorite thing, but each to their own. People like to restore, build, drive. I don't judge. It's like you do whatever you want. It's your car. People come to me and say, oh, here's my car with 50 miles on it. Isn't it great? Well, maybe for them it is, but I'd sooner be interested in someone showing me a car with 500,000 miles, because you go, wow, that car's lived a life. There's some great stories there. Tell me about the car, right? But, it's kind of, some people like to put art on the wall. Some people like to put cars in the garage. And that's what Porsche passion is to me.
Yeah. So I also noticed that, a lot of Porsches, you keep mentioning high miles, which I find interesting. Porsche owners really drive their cars, where, you see a lot of Ferrari people and stuff like that. It's more of a sit in the garage and not drive it that much and things like that. Like, what do you think the difference, the mentality, is it the actual, the usability of the car, or is it the mindset of the owner?
It's a combination of both. Porsches, in a way, were more reliable. Ferrari's a bit different today, but, the company's the same age as Porsche pretty much within a year. Porsches, for the most part, I often say, were the obtainable, everyday, everyman supercar, in the sense that at a certain period, they were affordable cars. They were reliable cars. You could use them as a daily driver. They weren't quite as high strung. They were more reliable. They didn't need as much maintenance and upkeep. They weren't as sensitive. So I think that's why people drove Porsches as daily drivers, as opposed to, equivalent era Ferraris, whether it was a Daytona, a Dino, a 512 Boxer, or a Testarossa. Those cars might just have been ergonomically not as comfortable, not as user-friendly, not as practical. So, and also Porsches were more affordable. So I think it was a case of reliability and usability and affordability as to why you see more high mileage Porsches. They were more obtainable, and so I think that's still true to this day, really, especially the old classic cars. Plus Porsche, compared to Ferrari and Lamborghini, they made a lot more of them, right? So they were more obtainable from a price point of view, a reliability point of view. America is Porsche's largest global market still to this day. California is perhaps, the most sort of Porsche-centric place in the country. So, up until probably 10 years ago, when these cars became more desirable, they were just used Beetles, right? I often joke about them being, used Beetles, no big deal, whether it was a 912, 914, or whatever it may have been. I bought a lot of Porsches for not a lot of money. So that's my theory on why they were more usable, more drivable, and why you see more high mileage Porsches than you may Lamborghinis or Ferraris.
So your cars are very lived in, which I think is very cool. You buy driver cars, you restore them to a certain point, but from what I've seen, I follow your Instagram, I've watched your videos. You leave you always leave character on your cars. You don't make them polished and perfect. I assume that's just more about your aesthetic than anything else.
Well, first of all, nothing is ever perfect. Nothing needs to be perfect. There's no such thing as a perfect car. To me, I buy what I like because it reflects an era or an experience that I want to enjoy. But I always say the car determines whether it gets modified or not. And what I mean by that is, for example, the silver 76 Turbo sat behind me or next to me. It's the first production Porsche Turbo sold in the US. I'm not going to modify that car. It's the original motor, some original paint. I don't need everything to be modified. To me, it's all about variety. But what I love about early Porsches is they are really easy to modify. So when I say the car determines what gets modified, at one point I had 567Ss, which became a very desirable car. But when I was getting into them, they were just an old 911 that maybe 20 years ago people didn't care about. And so a lot of those cars had a lot of deferred maintenance. Maybe the motors weren't original. So for me, those were the cars that, I really liked. They represented this era of the iconic golden age of Porsche motorsport, 60s and 70s. And so that's sort of my area of enjoyment, the sport purpose element, building these streetable track cars. And for me, I like to add my own personality. It's a little bit of that era of what I call the Vic Elford Monte Carlo Rally, mixed with a little bit of Americana, mixed with some Le Mans inspired liveries. And I throw all that in a blender. And what comes out is sort of my own interpretation of my own personal style. But I never set out to replicate something that the Porsche factory did, or race. Like, I've never done here's a Golf livery 73 RS or Martini livery or whatever it is. I like to add my own personality, my own individuality to the cars. I don't necessarily want everything to look like everyone else's car. I sort of want it to be a little bit unique, and that's my own personality. It's reflected in the clothes that I design, the buildings that I've developed, and also the common thread with the cars. The three things that I've done since I've been in America, the clothing, the property development, the buildings, the films, and the cars, is they've all got, I think, a splash of my personality. That's the thread that weaves that fabric together. And it's yet again back to, I just enjoy doing things that inspire me, motivate me, and make me happy. But not everything has to be modified. But I just did this 993 art car that I'm sat next to, and that was a fun project as well. So my sort of taste is always evolving, but I keep all the classics, and that's kind of my Porsche modification theory. Everyone's entitled to do whatever they want to their own car, whether it pisses off the purist or not. I have numbers matching original cars that I enjoy quite just as much as the modified ones. It's the variety of life, really.
So my favorite Magnus Walker touch on your cars are the drilled door handles.
Yeah.
Is that like a trademark for you now, or do you do that for everything, or is it just the odd car?
Nah, just the odd car. The new, I suppose, trademark signature touch would be the louvered fenders. That was something that had never been done before. So for me, it's just trying to sort of push my own boundaries of aesthetic design and trying to do something that hadn't been done before. It's kind of like, when you're a band trying to follow up the one album, you don't want to be a one-hit wonder. So drilled door handles was something I did probably 10 years ago, and just constantly evolving. Not everything has to have it. So, it's like the 993 doesn't have louvered fenders or drilled door handles, and it's my current favorite thing. So, maybe it's the flavor of the month. I don't know. But to me, it's always about evolving, and, there's a time and place for everything. You can always go back and revisit, but it's always back to adding my own little touches or things that I just find interesting. The drilled door handles was one, louvered deck lids was another, louvered fenders was another, and then adding these sort of, interesting paint schemes and, just doing little tweaks and touches, but not trying to copy something that had been done before. Inspiration's all around. It's all about gaining inspiration, whether it's music, 70s culture, art. I say inspiration's all around. I'm inspired a lot by street art. I walk a lot. I'm still averaging almost 9,500 steps. So I'm walking all the time. Got my phone out, taking inspiration, whatever it may be. One of the things I love about downtown LA and the Arts District is there's a great amount of street art. It's what I love about walking around New York City. So it doesn't have to be, a lot of my inspiration that ends up on the cars doesn't necessarily come from cars. It's just whatever's around me. So you got to be open to doing things a little bit differently, but also back to do what you love, do what inspires you, right?
So I saw that you followed up, Urban Outlaw with Big Apple Outlaw. You created a short video. You're spending more time in New York City. So two questions. How does New York City compare to LA for you, and which city has better fish and chips?
Two great questions. Two completely different cities. New York is super inspirational in everything but car culture. There is a car culture there, but it's not quite as accessible. The accessibility to driving roads is not nearly as great as it is here in LA. Less than 18 miles from where I'm sat is the base of Angeles Crest Highway. Highway 2 goes to an elevation of 8,000 feet. It's a world-class top 10 motoring road that I drive every week because it's literally, I can be there in 20, 30 minutes. New York doesn't have that accessibility to great roads. New York has great accessibility to world-class art museums and galleries and street art and food, and it's walkable, and it's surrounded by water and the rivers and the bridges, and there's all types of culture and character there on every single block, whether it's fish and chips, hunt, or pizza, or whatever it may be. LA's not quite as LA's more hidden. New York, you sort of stumble into things that you wouldn't stumble into in LA. But I like them both. I like the inspiration that both cities offer. LA has more accessibility to better driving, but it's best of both. Which one has better fish and chips? It's tough, really. LA used to have an English pub called the Cat and Fiddle that had great fish and chips. That's not quite there anymore. New York's got a place called the Salt and Battery that has very good fish and chips. But it's hard to find good fish and chips. Every Irish pub serves fish and chips, but here's the test. When it arrives, before I even bite into it, I can tell you if it's going to be good or not. If it looks like a greasy brick, I don't even need to bite into it to know that this thing's just been over battered, over fried. And when you break through that thick, greasy crust, you don't even need to take the bite. The fish is going to be soggy and overcooked. So the best fish and chips really is in England. Some of the best fish and chips I've ever had are in Scotland in a place called Stonehaven. So I'm always on a quest for good fish and chips and a good burger. So, maybe there's going to be more of this outlaw cooking thing where I'm a man trying to find good basic food, like the Beardo's Guide to, good burgers and good fish and chips. So, we all have opinions. And the great thing about the internet is you can share them.
If next time you're in New York, if you're looking for a good burger, you might know about this place or not, but in the Parker Meridian Hotel near the MoMA, there's a hidden burger joint. Do you know about this?
So, where are you based?
I'm in Toronto, but
Okay.
I spend a lot of time in New York and Los Angeles.
Okay.
Well, when you could get on planes, but in the lobby of the Parker Meridian Hotel, so an $800 a night hotel, there is behind a curtain a really I don't even know how to describe it. It's almost like they built the hotel around an old burger joint that wouldn't give up their land, so they just built around it. So it seats maybe 30 people. It's like a dive bar if dive bars sold burgers. And
how much are the burgers in the Meridian? How much is the burger?
Oh no, it regular price. Like you're not paying like $20 a burger. It's like a $5-6 burger, and they're really, really good. But the place has got so much character. It's like it's almost out of a movie. So you got to check that out one time.
I got to check it out because my pet peeve in New York is what I call the $25 burger on the 20-cent bun.
Mm-hmm.
It's my pet peeve. It's hard to find a good burger as well. But New York, actually, great thing about New York is availability and accessibility to really a lot of variety of food, different price
Mm-hmm.
points. And that's what I love about New York. You never go hungry walking around New York.
Mm-hmm. Hey, so we have a question. Ryan Coleman, who is a friend of mine, he's a Porsche owner. He's curious what your take is on non-traditional Porsche models, the SUVs, Panamera, Taycan. Is variety good, or should they sort of stick with?
Variety's good. It's a great question. Thanks for answering that. Literally 5 minutes before I got on this call, I had a buddy visit me from Austin, Texas, and he came down with a buddy in a Porsche Cayenne, and the guy seemed a little bit awkward about it. He was coming in a diesel Cayenne. I go, what are you on about? 2 of my all-time top 10 drives anywhere in the world have been in Porsche Cayennes, and I just told him the story I'm going to tell you. 2 of those top 10s in the Porsche Cayenne. One was driving across Australia, basically from Brisbane all the way across the Simpson Desert as rock off-road. That was in a Porsche Cayenne. And the other super memorable journey, also in a Cayenne, was down in Colombia from Bogota to Medellin. So to me, those are trips that I couldn't have done in a 911. I did it in a Cayenne. And to me, those type of trips back to memorable moments. It's not so much about how fast you necessarily go from A to B. Sometimes, even though I do like speed, sometimes it's just about these environments. And I couldn't have done the trip across Australia in a 911. And the Cayenne was an awesome way to experience that environment. So back to adapting to the environment. I always say if there's a Porsche badge on it, doesn't matter what model it is, it's a Porsche, whether it's a Taycan, a 914, or a Cayenne or a Macan. Doesn't matter to me. You can have a lot of fun in a minivan. So it's all about making the most out of every moment. And I've had a lot of fun in Cayennes.
All right. So you mentioned variety. My dream garage is very specific. There's a lot of cars I don't like. Like I'm probably really into maybe 6 models at most, but it's an Alfa Romeo Spider because I owned one. That was the first car I ever bought with my own money, so I kind of wanted to get another just to relive that moment. I want 80s eras 911s. I want a 911 SC. I want a 964. I want a 968, and I want a Volvo 1800 like the Saint, and probably the last one.
More.
Yeah, the last one on the list is a BMW 2002.
Nice.
So
That's a good list.
Most of my list is Porsche, but I've got a little bit of variety. You're very focused on Porsche, but I know you like other stuff too. What sort of cars are out there that you really admire, that you either own or would love to own for a short time?
Well, currently the non-Porsche that I have in the garage, not too far from where I'm sat, it's a 79 Lotus Europa S2 Esprit. I really like that car. Back in the 90s, when I wasn't purely Porsche at one time, I owned a 65 Mustang GT 350R replica with a 351 Cleveland, Richmond 5-speed, and a Detroit locker. I also had a Series 1 67 E-Type Jag Coupe. I had two 69 Super Bs. I still have the tattoo right there. I had a 73 Lotus Europa, and I had a 79 308 GTB Ferrari, and a few Porsches, all at the same time. Now, as great as those cars were, each one sort of did one thing pretty good, but I found the Porsche excelled almost at everything. It's like the muscle cars were fast in a straight line, but they didn't really stop. They didn't go around a corner, but you could drag race anything from stoplight to stoplight. But literally over a period of a few years in the late 90s, I got rid of everything that was non-Porsche and just solely focused on Porsche, because to me, they covered all the senses and they did all the driving experiences pretty well. So never say never. I mean, like I say, I own the Lotus. That's a non-Porsche car, but to me, it's all about variety. But there's a lot of things I'd like on the list. I'd like possibly to get another E-Type Jag. Last year, I was fortunate enough to do the Mille with Mercedes-Benz. And, if money was no object, I'd love a Gullwing. But, of course, they're ridiculously expensive. But, I'm lucky that I get to drive cars that I don't necessarily have to own. So I often say you don't have to own them to experience them. And that's the OPP category, and the OPC, other people's cars.
All right, you've been very generous with your time. 2 more questions, then I'm going to give you your night back or your day back. What is it like for you to chase a car? If you sort of get it in your head that you want a specific model or you want something that's missing in your collection, what's it like for you? Because I imagine there's two things that you run up against. Either people want to overcharge you because they know who you are and they think that you're made of money or something, or like at the same time you should be able to just sort of like send out the bat signal and people would be lining up to be able to say they sold a car to you. So what is it hard for you to get a specific thing?
It's probably the latter. I've never overpaid for anything. I like to pride myself on being smart when it comes to the price point of cars. So it's kind of the latter. The thrill is always of the chase. Sometimes you're looking for something and you never find it. I have a great story of that. 10 years ago, I had a big chase on for a 64 911, which I ultimately found. But on the road to the 64 911, I get an email from a guy. I had an ad on Craigslist and all over the place. And this story goes like this: 64 911 wanted, blah, blah, blah. Guy shoots me an email. He goes, I don't have a 64 911, but my brother's got a 76 911. Would that be something you're interested in? I go, sure, send me photos. I'm interested in anything, right? So back then, a 76 911 was the least desirable 911. But it turned out this 76 911 was the 2.7 RS MFI version, of which Porsche only made 113. And at the time, I didn't know that car existed. So that was how I found a car I wasn't looking for. That's happened to me quite a lot of times. In today's world of Instagram and social media, it's pretty easy to put a wanted ad on, right? So recently I had a wanted ad, Gen 1 Aero Kit 996. Guy shoots me an ad or a DM or whatever it was. He goes, I know this is not what you're looking for, but I've got a 2004 996. I'll practically give it to you. I go, well, what is practically giving it to me? He goes, I'll sell it to you for $5,000. $5,000. So my first question is, does the car run? He goes, yeah. I go, be honest, does it need anything mechanically? He goes, no. I go, what does it really need? He goes, well, the paint's a little rough, but it's a good driver car. So I wasn't looking for a Gen 2 996 2004 slate gray 911, but it was only $5,000. So that car came to me. So what I mean, it's all about the thrill of the chase. truth be told, like I say, people always seem to be really respectful. I've never overpaid for anything, and I don't think I've ever been overcharged for anything. So it's all back to the Porsche community of what goes around comes around, treat people fairly, and those are my stories on chasing things down. It's always fun to chase something down, what you're looking for, and sometimes along the way, you find things you didn't even know you wanted. So that's the story to that. Recently, I went to the Pomona swap meet probably a year ago, which was where I bought my first Porsche and various others. And, you know, I always say when you go to a Pomona swap meet and you're not looking for something, that's when you find something. And that was how I found my 1988 944 Turbo, of which I bought in the low teens. So deals are still out there if you're prepared to wait or put a wanted ad out there. So, like I said, there's a Porsche for every price point.
All right, last question. So we don't know each other. You know, you didn't have to do this, but you did because, you know, like, and I'm very grateful and I appreciate it. I sat down, did about an hour's worth of research. There is a lot of information about you on the internet. So I'm curious, you know, like, do you enjoy living in public? I'm sure you have a pretty good control of what gets out and what doesn't get out. And, you know, you're not like a A-list celebrity where you're being chased around with paparazzi and there's rumors and things about you. But, you know, there's a lot about you on the internet. Do you like that? Do you not like that? You know, do you ever think about it?
I don't really think about it. I'm a man with a beard. You know, I'm busy doing my own things, like my 17-hour day yesterday. So, you know, when it comes to social media, I put out there what I want to put out there. I enjoy engaging when I do. I get to travel the world and go to some great events, and people have been generous to invite me to attend events and do these interesting drives. And, you know, I just make the most out of every moment, and I don't really overthink what it is that I do, so long as I'm not harming others and enjoying life and, you know, meeting interesting people and doing things like this, sharing stories. So, you know, back to, you know, do what you love, treat people respectfully, be dedicated to what it is you're putting your energy into. And that's about as much as I sort of luck into it. You know, I mean, I always say without Tamir's filmer, who's a fellow Canadian based in Toronto, I wouldn't be here. So, you know, you make the most out of every opportunity. If it feels right and you go with it. And that's kind of how it is. I don't overthink too many things and take it day by day. That's my motto. That's my story.
All right. So one last really quick question. You don't put your name on a lot of things. Like, you know, you don't seem, I'm sure you get hit up by brands all the time. You've got, you know, you've done a steering wheel, you've got a line of tires or rims, and you've got, you know, a Porsche design watch and a few things, but, you know, you don't seem to really, you know, sell out or cash in or whatever term you want to use on a lot of stuff. One, I'm curious why not, and two, now that you've sort of become like a celebrity, do you ever think about maybe putting out another clothing line?
Yeah, I'm always thinking about the clothing. You know, it's my background. I actually had a wanted ad to try and find a new designer to help me rebrand. You know, I'm not good at graphics. I'm good at ideas. I'm not good at sitting at the computer on a Photoshop. It's like these art cars. I literally mock them up with paper tape or take a photo and print it out and then get out the Sharpies. So I do things that I enjoy. I have a collaboration with Hot Wheels that I've had for 5 years where there's really no money involved in it. But, you know, I've done 25 Hot Wheel cars with my name on it for Hot Wheels. And that's one of those sort of pinch yourself moments. How did that opportunity come by? But it was purely organic, just like everything else I've done in my life. Same as the Momo steering wheel, whatever I've done with Porsche. And, you know, to me, these collaborations, they're not about money. They're about creating stuff that makes sense, back again, simple, that I'm inspired to do. You know, the Hot Wheels reach is huge. You know, there's no money involved, but it's a perfect business card. It's like the guys that came to visit me 5 minutes before I got on the air with you. They left with a bunch of Hot Wheels. You know, these are stuff that you can find in any supermarket for 99 cents, but they've got my name on them. I kind of co-designed them. So for me, it's just about creating stuff that's memorable, that's ultimately enjoyable. A lot of people approach me to, hey, do you want to do a collab on this, that, and the other, whether it's sunglasses or whiskey? I go, well, I don't wear sunglasses. So until I start wearing them, why am I going to endorse it? I don't drink whiskey, so why am I going to endorse some Outlaw whiskey, right? You know, they have to make sense to me. It's not about, I guess I've been fortunate in the car thing's a hobby, just to clarify that. Everything that you see is my own cars, my collection. I don't build customer cars. I seldom sell a car. So that's kind of what separates me from other people that do similar things. It's not a business, it's a hobby. Could it become a business? Yeah, but then I'd have to hire people. And when hobbies become businesses, sometimes they're not as enjoyable. So to me, my money comes from the film location thing and investments in property in myself that I'd made that, became sort of, I guess, lucrative. So the whole car thing's just a hobby. Yeah, I could put my name on stuff. I'm not at that point yet. To me, it's about timing and what makes sense. A lot of people approach me to do things that I'm not interested in. So my collaborations are basically limited to stuff that I'm engaged in and I enjoy doing, and that's kind of it. That's how I pick and choose what makes sense.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you so much for doing this. This was a real
Hey,
thrill.
no problem. It's been awesome. It's been great sharing stories together, and I thank you for the opportunity.
So please take a second, tell people where to follow you on Instagram, where to, anything you want to plug if you have anything.
I don't have anything to plug. I'm Magnus Walker. I'm a man with a beard. Make the most out of every opportunity. If you want to follow, I'm on Instagram, Magnus Walker. And that's about it. So thanks, guys.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Cheers. Have a great day. Bye.